What's your lemonade stand story?
And he was like, YouTube's going to be the next big thing, Devin. Like, you need to get on that. You need to get on it early. And I'm like,
And all of us, we all go through our own trials, our own level of stuff.
Sure hope this works out. Otherwise, this will be a huge waste of time.
I mean, what else is it all about other than just taking risks and continuing to try and grow and hopefully get better and better at making things?
Most of the billion-dollar brands you've seen were started by people that were just solving a problem for themselves.
We're telling lemonade stand stories from some of the world's top creators, makers, and go-getters.
We're rolling right now.
Hey,
We're having fun. We're rolling.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this podcast today is sponsored by Yalla, a task management and team collaboration software that we use at Lemonade Stand. We use Yalla to keep all of our team members organized, wherever they are. In fact, we used it to plan and organize this podcast. Visit yalla.team, that's YALLA.team, and try it for free. We also have a special offer for all listeners of this podcast. Use promo code LEMONADE and get a lifetime 25% off if you upgrade. What's going on, guys? This is Shem Prabhakar with the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast, and I'm here with two delightful human beings that are so incredible and inspiring. I've known Jason Allred over here to my right with the backwards shirt, a backwards hat.
That's good. My shirt's on the right way. My hat's on backwards.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting confused at like his apparel. But I've known Jason Allred for many, many years, almost 20 years now, actually, and it's been awesome. Like we met because his brother Corbin Allred is a dear friend of mine. We served our missions together, which is very ironic because we're going to be talking about mission stories, which is so great. And then to my left here is Bryce Clark. And Bryce Clark, it's funny because I've heard of him. I've heard of him through his wife back in 2008 when I was working on a film called Abandoned Mine. And I think we exchanged an email or two, and I was actually like really looking forward to getting to know you. But we never actually fully connected till, oh my gosh, it must have been 2018, something like that, right? In Alpine, Utah. Yep. You had formed this company, I believe called Storyland, and with a bunch of like great creators and doing all kinds of fun projects. And so I got to meet, and like my mind like clicked. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the Bryce Clark that I had emailed forever ago. And so we've connected, and it's funny because like we've done some projects together. Produce some stuff. We haven't worked on anything together, but it was always like a hope of mine that we could. And our first project that we're all doing together is a podcast. Feels really good. You know, we're all on camera, guys. It's so great.
It's very timely, right?
Very timely. No, but guys, seriously, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. And the whole Lemonade Stand Stories podcast is about people's lemonade stand stories. When they were kids, they started a lemonade stand, you know, or they sold worms. We've had a couple of people that talked about that. But you two are both filmmakers, and I'd love to learn about why film was your choice, because we know that film is a very unpredictable career. It's a very difficult career, especially if you guys have families, which you guys do. Yeah. And I do not, and I still find it difficult. So why film? Let's hear from both of you guys.
Well, I'll defer to Bryce first. And
sure.
Well, for me, it started with writing. And writing was the thing in school that I always got positive feedback from. And I wrote this piece for a writing contest when I was 11 about the Boston Celtics, and I won the contest.
Nice.
And everything else in school was abject failure.
Yeah.
And so it was like, okay, I guess I'm a writer. And then I remember I saw the movie Do the Right Thing, and everyone was talking about Spike Lee because he was like in the Jordan commercials and he was like prominent. And they were like, oh, he wrote and directed this. And that was the first time that I put together that like, oh, people write movies. I didn't know that. And so I became obsessed with screenwriting and just wrote scripts. And I finally sold one and then watched it get taken away, and like nothing happened to it.
Yeah.
And I always thought that like directing was this thing that was like other geniuses could do, but not somebody like me. And so I actually went back to school at Dixie State University in South Jordan and got a degree in film and learned how to like direct. And then I made a movie called Ben Banks that had Misha Barton and Melora Hardin from The Office.
That was the one that I heard, because that was in southern Utah, right? Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah. And, you know, I had some other chances to write in some different things. I wrote a couple of kids' books and made this movie called Phobic that just came out on iTunes and stuff. But it's just always been like my passion to write and to tell stories. And then sort of figuring out that directing is a storytelling skill.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be like a genius with cameras or a genius with, in fact, it's much better if everyone around you is more talented than you are.
And they kind of support you and raise you up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's interesting because you were saying that when you started writing, you like really came alive, right? And everything else was dead to you in a sense. You're like, forget everything else, right? Did you feel the same way with directing?
Directing, I had such a fear about directing, and that like I don't know what I'm doing. But when I started doing it, like this movie Ben Banks that I made, I never directed anything before that.
Yeah.
And just learning how it's taking all of these different technical aspects, but making sure that they're serving the story. Yeah. And so for me, it all comes back to like the writing and the storytelling. That's like my anchor point. I know some directors are anchored in like the cinematography. Yeah. Some are like VFX guys. My anchor is like the script. And then working with the actors to try to elicit the best performances that you can.
Well, I think it's great because, you know, I've worked with different directors before, but like when a director is like really concerned with the story and with characters, I feel like that is what gets the audience connected. I've worked on projects where it was like very visual effects heavy and people aren't connected emotionally because, oh my gosh, I love that 3D render. Yeah, no one says that, you know?
Right.
But if it's like a character was having a really powerful emotion and an experience, and then the audience member can relate to it, it almost becomes like a form of therapy because they can connect. So
yeah,
that's awesome. And I love that. And Jason, what about yourself?
So I was not on the film or storytelling path when I was younger. I wanted to be a doctor.
I'm so glad you did not make that awful choice.
So you know, I came out of high school, thought I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon, and went down to BYU. Started my degree there. Was pre-med. Went on my mission to Germany. Came back from my mission. And I was still registered for all those, you know, medical type classes that were like really smart people do.
Of course.
And I got a 0.9 GPA that semester.
So it didn't make you come alive then?
Well, I hated the classes. I had this life experience, and I had enjoyed learning about people and, you know, and telling stories, really teaching the gospel. And I came home and I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. This is not for me.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I got a 0.9 GPA. And I say that because I think a lot of people are afraid of failing. You know, I've got kids. One is in school. One's going to be going to college in the fall.
Which is crazy to me that you have kids that old now. Jeez.
It's crazy to me too. Yeah. But the idea that you get into college and you can't fail, like you can fail in college and still be able to be successful. So I tell people all the time that I got a 0.9 GPA at BYU. Anyway, my next semester, I took a film class and I was like, this is it. Now, I had a little bit of an in because of my brother Corbin.
Yep.
Corbin started acting when he was 12. I was 14. And so we'd been around kind of the periphery of the business a little bit. And, or I had been. Corbin was deep in. But I was like, okay, I'm going to take this film class. I love it. And I'm thinking, well, Corbin, I can get a job because of Corbin.
Yeah.
That's not the way it went. But
interesting. Yeah.
But, you know, I had started a job at KBYU as a video editor. I had no experience. Literally, it was a phone interview that was like, have you ever worked in film before, in video before? No. Have you ever worked with television before? No. Have you ever edited before? No. Are you available every day from Monday through Friday from 1 to 5:30? Yeah, that fits my schedule. Okay, you're hired.
Did you tell him like, well, yeah, because I have a 0.9 GPA. I'm totally available. That would have helped.
No, I didn't tell him that, but
too bad.
But anyway, so I got that job and I learned visual storytelling on the job. And that helped going through the film program at BYU because I already had this structural understanding of how to put images together and tell a story. And so that's kind of where I started, and I was lucky. I was fortunate enough, straight out of school, to jump onto a show, Touched by an Angel, the television show. I did the last 2.5 seasons as a production assistant, and from there I just climbed the ladder. It's been 20 years.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because you're probably one of the first film people I met when I came home from my mission and I wanted to get into film, because Corbin was there and like he introduced us to each other, and I remember like being on set and like, you know, you were like the AD, like the leader of the pack. I mean, honestly, like a director sometimes gets like so jumbled and carried away, and you need like a good solid first AD to be like, rein it back in. We've got to get this shot done and everything done. And that was you know, and you ran this ship a lot of times. And I remember being like, I need to get in Jason's good graces. What can I possibly do to do that? So I was telling you I was going to go to India, right? I was going to go visit my homeland, and you're like, Sharon, I would love for you to bring me
just anything. I was just like, just bring me something.
Bring me back anything. That was a requirement. It was a very tall order.
Yeah, right. I was like, I didn't care. It could have been spices.
It could have been fabrics. Yeah. I know how you like your fabrics.
Exactly. I'm totally into those.
Yeah. But what I chose to bring him was like this, I don't know, like about that tall, like a big, like Indian deity, which I carried on the plane with me, of Ganesh, which is one of the Indian gods who's half human and with an elephant head. And I'll tell you what, like that still takes, like it's still like on the shrine next to your Jesus Christ pictures and family photos.
It's in my front room.
That's so great. And we made a pact that any shoe that we're on, it has to be in it. You know, that is a requirement. It has to be in there somewhere.
It's tough convincing people sometimes, though, isn't it?
I mean, they just don't see the vision. Clearly, they don't see the vision. Bryce sees the vision.
Big old pink elephant in the corner with an umbrella.
I don't understand what's not to see. But guys, this is great. I love like your journeys and everything, and I would love to talk about how you two joined forces, because was this your first project together that you worked on? Yeah, so tell me how that went, and because did you write the movie already, and what inspired you to write the movie, and then how did you guys?
So about 2 years ago, Deseret Book came to me and said, "Are you interested in developing this project that's going to take real stories from the mission field and dramatize them in half-hour episodes?
Wow,
for a TV series that's going to launch on this new Deseret streaming platform?" And my first thought was, well, I didn't serve a mission, so I don't.
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to bring to it?
Right.
But as I thought more about it, I realized that I had a really cool mission story myself, because when I should have been serving a mission, I ended up sharing the gospel with a friend of mine who joined the church. The missionary who taught him in the discussions, they connected. That missionary went home to Salt Lake, and his life completely fell apart.
Oh no.
And, suicide, drugs, like every problem that you could imagine, this guy struggled with.
This elder that was teaching your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But through that all, my friend stayed in contact with this elder, even after he was excommunicated from the church, and kept reminding him of their shared experience and the knowledge that the church is true, the gospel is true. And, a little bit before I started developing this project, my friend flew out I'm from the Boston area, flew out here and rebaptized.
No way.
That elder. As that was happening, I had lost that company that you mentioned. And I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I relapsed like really bad, like the kind where if it doesn't stop, like you die kind of thing. And when I saw that this elder, who I had no contact with for 20 years, when I went to lunch with them and heard his story about how he was able to get help and come back and be rebaptized, I realized, it's one of those things where in your mind you think, well, I'm not as bad off as as that person, and they were able to do it.
Yeah.
So I actually went in to treatment for 3 months as I was developing this project, and realized that story should be one of the first stories.
Wow.
And so that gave me kind of like a personal connection to the material. Like, even though I didn't serve a mission, missionary work has touched my life.
Of course.
And so coming out of treatment, I was working with Art Van Wagenen at Deseret Book. And they had kind of like, when my life fell apart, the project kind of like died, and we weren't sure what was going to happen with it. And so I had the idea that what if my company, I have a company called Frost Road Entertainment now, what if my company got the financing for it, and we were able to make 3 episodes to sort of show what this could be and do them as an anthology film. And they said that would be great. Like, let's see if we can do that. And so part of that effort to sort of get interest and sort of get support for the project, we had this meeting with 14 former mission presidents and their wives. And it was incredible, like hearing all of the stories. And the thing that was consistent through each of the stories as I listened that night was how seemingly random and coincidental things turned out not to be random.
Yeah.
And not to be coincidences. Like over and over and over, so much that it was a pattern. And one of the stories, which is in the film, I really loved and was hopeful. It's one of those stories where like it's just people talking, but what they're talking about and the way that it transpires is so powerful that it deeply moved me. And so writing that one was I loved the experience. And I've always been like, well, I'm a filmmaker who happens to be LDS, and this experience has kind of like made me see myself differently as like an LDS filmmaker, and realizing like we have all these great stories, and a lot of them are mission stories. And so we got the support for the project, and we're setting it up, and we were like, okay, we need somebody who can help us get this into production and actually make the thing. And Art was like, Jason Allred. That's who we need to help produce this with you and get it, actually to where we're filming things.
Sure.
And so Jason came on and helped put together the crew and the cast, and did his thing. Which with all of his different experiences, he brings a lot to the table as a producer. And I was able to focus on directing and sort of like the creative aspects of what we were doing. But so that's how you
guys even connected that way.
That's how we connected. Like,
that's crazy, because that was just last year, right? Because I remember I was filming Alien Country with Corbin, and I remember you were like saying, because you came to set a couple times, said, hey, I'm working on this project. I didn't realize it was with you, and that's crazy.
So last October.
So how did Arthur connect you to like Bryce? Like, what was that whole thing like?
So Arthur and I go back into our teens. We grew up kind of together playing soccer, soccer with each other and against each other. And then we ended up playing at BYU. I played soccer on the BYU men's soccer team. Arthur was on the BYU men's soccer team, and we've kept in touch over the years. And we've always talked about wanting to do something together, do a project, just develop stuff. And we haven't ever been able to do it, but we keep in contact. And when he said, hey, I've got this project that's developing. It's for our new platform at Deseret Book that we're doing, the streaming platform, and we're going to tell these like episodic stories. Would you be interested in it, in doing some budgets for it? That's how it started. Would you be interested in doing some budgets for it? I'm like, I'll do some budgets. And from there it was like, hey, why don't you come on and meet Bryce? Okay, cool. I'll come meet Bryce. So I show up at the office. I meet Bryce. I'm like, Bryce is cool. Let's do this.
Dude, that is just crazy how that all kind of like just like worked out. And I love what you were saying, that it was like it felt maybe random at the time, and then as you look back, you're like, no, there was nothing random about this. It was all very orchestrated. I love it when things like that happen, because you realize that the hand of the Lord really is involved in those type of things to make things like that happen. Because, you know, you look at the process of filmmaking, right? Oh, what were we gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, for us, particularly in the film industry, last year with COVID was crazy. Like all of a sudden, I had a job that was like a 27-week job just disappear. And so I was like, what am I going to do? You know, I've got a family, I've got a mortgage. And I was actually kind of coming out of my own depressive like spiral that I had been in. And so being able to meet Bryce and being able to be onto this project with Arthur and Bryce, it was like, no, this is what was supposed to happen. You know, and like we had so many cool experiences working with awesome actors that also kind of had their own little side story. Right. And like my son James was on the show as a production assistant, and being on the show, telling the mission stories was like, it was fuel to solidify his desire to serve a mission. And his mission application is actually at church headquarters right now, awaiting a call. So
that is crazy. I mean, and it's so interesting. Like you were saying, you suffered a bit of a depressive episode. You were going through your own struggles. I feel like that's kind of how the Lord works, you know? A lot of times he lets you go through these things and you're kind of going through all these challenges, and all of a sudden he breaks you open to something powerful and magical and saying, okay, you guys, we went through this and it was a very difficult time, but now because of the atonement and everything, because of all this power, now you can create something that can really impact the world. Because I think like if you didn't have those struggles and you just went and did it, it may have fallen flat. But like you were saying, some of those stories really, really, really resonated with you. So the format of this, is it a film then? Or is it, is the first one is a film?
What's coming out May 7th is the first 3 chapters as an anthology movie. So it's basically 3 short films that are connected by themes of redemption and faith and service. And it's kind of like to sort of see what the audience would be like for this type of content, because the platform they're still building and they're still developing it. And so this is to kind of like show to audiences and show to people, this is what this could be. And we're hopeful that there will be an audience for it, and that it will lead to more things, not just a series, but like a brand, mission stories, storytelling through all different types of platforms and medium. And so that's our hope. But yeah, we are starting it as an anthology film.
Anthology film. But yeah, it's cool because it can be branched out into a series, which is amazing. So as an anthology film, is it going to be played in theaters first?
Yes, it's exclusively in theaters. Actually launches May 6th, the evening previews on that Thursday.
Okay.
And the theaters that it's playing in are in Utah to start. And then hopefully if there's an audience for it, we'll grow it from there.
Absolutely. Well, I love it, guys. And I think it's so exciting to like go with this and like and share something powerful. Now you said you haven't shared you didn't serve a proper mission, but like you had a complete missionary experience that lasted really, in a sense, generations.
Yes.
You know, what about yourself? Was there ever a moment on your own mission in Germany where you're like, this was a very powerful experience for me?
Oh yeah, no, there were plenty of really powerful experiences. I think the crazy thing about missions is we as a culture, as a church, you know, we hold these missionaries up to like this high standard, right? Like missionaries are amazing. And then you get out on your mission and like, I got to Germany and I was like, this is so hard.
It's so hard, right?
It's, you know, I went to Southern Germany.
Yeah.
I was taught German in the missionary training center, but they teach you the proper German. In Southern Germany, it's not spoken very often.
Yeah.
And so literally I thought they had taught me Chinese.
Yeah. I've had a similar experience. Yeah.
So it was so hard. And, you know, I alluded to the fact that I've suffered from depression. You know, there were depressive episodes on my mission but then through serving, through working with with the members of the church over there in Germany, and working with the missionaries, and then working with the wonderful people of Germany. Like, there were times where it was just like, this is awesome. This is amazing. This is where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And I've talked about my mission for my whole life since then.
Yeah.
And my kids they all know about it. They, you know, I've kept up my German fairly well, which has been interesting in the film industry because I've been able to use it. Yeah. Which is cool.
Didn't you get killed in Saints and Soldiers?
I did. I got killed in Saints and Soldiers.
Well, so did your brother, but he came back.
Yeah. He did. I had one line and then I got shot.
Oh, man.
But I spoke the German really well.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, man. You know, it is interesting. The mission is the reason I even joined the church, which is kind of backwards. But I wanted to join the church so I could go on a mission. And I had like a really awesome conversion experience before.
You joined before you went, right?
I don't know. That's still debatable. We're trying to figure this out. I think so. Yes, I think I did. Yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting thing because just the idea of mission stories, it resonates with me so much because my life is a mission story. Like how I converted and like that whole experience, I still remember it very vividly. And I was 17, and then got to go on my mission to Australia, Chinese speaking, where I served with your brother, and had incredible experiences with your brother and just serving. And I remember thinking, like, when your film was coming out, I was kind of like watching the trailer and everything. I was like, this is so cool and needed. That's the other thing. It's not just, this is kind of fun, but it's a needed piece of content right now because the world is faced with a kind of darkness that is so heavy right now. And I mean, last year kind of showed us how quickly the world can change, right? And how quickly things can get shut down and things can switch up. And if anything, it's almost like a test run for the future. Like things could get even worse. We have no idea, but now it's like nothing seems impossible as far as like the craziness that could happen, right? So I felt very strongly last year that more light needed to be shared in all forms. So when something like this comes out, I'm like, this is what we need. This is completely what we need. Not just for, and I would say not just for LDS folks, but for people in general, because the idea of serving a mission, the idea of doing service, the idea of like getting outside of yourself and like sharing some good news is very important for anyone to, connect with. So I guess, what would you say would be your dream with this film coming out?
Well, my dream is that like a lot of people go see it and that it opens up opportunities to continue to tell these stories. One of the things that we realized is that we didn't want to tell like a day in the life of a missionary type of a story, which we've seen, and those can be really effective. For these first initial 3, we wanted to focus on conversion stories and allow some of the people who are investigating the church to be kind of like main characters in the story and to sort of see things from their points of view as well. And we were willing to tackle issues like addiction and suicidal tendencies, self-doubt. And self-doubt's a big one.
It's a big one.
It's a big one. And like, I really believe in the transformative power of the atonement and of the gospel. And you see it in these stories. Like you see what happens to people. And I saw it in my own life. Like one of the characters in one of the stories is based on me, which was a surreal experience to direct the actor doing that. But it was real. And I knew it was real because I lived through it. And so I knew that like I wasn't trying to manufacture emotion or trying to like create something out of nothing.
You were creating a very authentic experience.
Yeah, and something that like is not unique. That's the thing, is that like we tell these stories and they are powerful and they are different than normal life. But as soon as you tell one of these stories, everyone's like, oh, I've got one too, or 3 or 4. And that's because this is not reserved for anybody special. This is available to everybody. Yeah. So I hope that like if people watch this film, they'll connect with those themes of forgiveness and redemption And the idea that the arm of mercy is extended forever. Yeah. Like there's no way you can fall farther than
that mercy
than that reach
can reach you. That's powerful, man. What about you, Jason?
Repeat the question.
Ah, dang it! I was hoping you remember the question. No, I basically was asking like, what do you hope that the movie will accomplish? What's your dream with it?
Much like Bryce, I mean, I hope that a lot of people go see the film because I think we did a really good thing. You know, the craft level is high. The performances are great. Bryce did a great job directing, and I think that one of my favorite parts of the stories that we told is that, like Bryce said, it's not just a day in the life of a missionary or a day in the life of somebody like investigating the church. One of the stories takes place over 20 years, which hasn't been done in like a film approach before, at least to my knowledge. You know, all the films that have been done in the past about missionaries have, you know, focused on a short period of time. And this one shows that, you know, sometimes
it takes time.
Sometimes it takes a long time to change. Yeah. And that's okay.
Oh.
You know, it's okay if you try to change and you fall back for a minute. As long as you keep going and keep trying, like that's the power of, I think, the atonement that Bryce is just talking about. As long as you keep trying to push forward, the hand is outstretched.
Yeah.
And I hope that people see that when they go and see the film. I hope that, like I said, a lot of people see it. I hope that a lot of people tell their friends to go see it.
Yeah.
I hope that it just grows. And then I hope that a lot of people want to tell their own stories.
Yeah.
Like Bryce was alluding to earlier with, you know, this opens up an opportunity to tell more stories. Yeah. Right. So I hope that people want to tell their stories and allow us to help them tell their stories.
Yeah. An empowering message, really, more than anything else. Yeah. You know, it's interesting because, like you're saying, things take time. One of my favorite, I guess you could say, prophets in the Book of Mormon is Abinadi, because he basically was like, okay, I'm sharing my message, and then whatever happens to me happens. And he has no clue the influence that he ended up having before he passed away. But because of him, so many prophets kept coming after him, right? That were inspired by his message. And I remember I was teaching someone in Australia, and circumstances happened that allowed us to not be able to teach him anymore. And I never saw him again. And this was like kind of towards the end of the mission. I'm like, man, like I really was bummed because he was an older guy, but he was just so touched because it was one of those miracles where he was very sick. We came and gave him a blessing and he got healed immediately. It's like one of those rare things, you know, where he was like in the hospital and he got healed. And so he's like, and he didn't even believe in God. Then he's like, come over, teach me. So we taught him, and then somehow he disappeared. And I kind of forgot about him. And then I was teaching in MTC later on, and an elder wrote me a letter saying, hey, that guy that you taught and gave him a blessing, we just baptized him. Like, it's just like, what? Like, how did you guys connect with him again and all this stuff? And he says he always remembers that blessing that you gave. And I happened to teach this elder, and so he like remembered me, and it was just a crazy thing, right?
Again, not just coincidence that that was supposed to happen that way. Right.
That's what I'm saying. Like things like that just happen the way they do, right? So I want to talk a little bit about your own kind of personal lives. You know, like one of the big things about the lemonade stand story is everyone has to have lemons first before they can make lemonade, right? And we, being in the film industry, it's just like ripe with lemons, and just in life, we're just dealt lemons. I know you were talking sometimes a little bit about depressive episodes. You talked about suffering with alcoholism, but I want to talk about, was there a specific instance in your life where you felt that the arm of the Lord, that mercy was reached to you personally, and kind of picked you up out of those dark places?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll just talk about my experience in getting help.
Yeah.
I'd never gone to AA, you know, shockingly. But as part of my treatment, I did. And I remember there was a time where, as part of the steps, you ask God to remove your shortcomings. And I was staying in this house in Draper with a bunch of other people struggling with the same kind of things. Yeah. And I had a roommate, and most of these people were not from Utah. And so it was like 3:30 in the morning, and I woke up, and I started to feel my heart change as I was going through the treatment and the steps. And I went into the closet, and I knelt down, and with like real faith, like believing that like he could do this, not knowing if he would or not, but believing that he could. I asked him to remove the shortcomings that were the underpinnings of my addiction. And the sort of wave of light that like flowed over me. It's one of those things where I can't deny that happened. And there's no way that I could manufacture what I felt in that moment. And from that night on, like, I know that I'll always have to manage this for the rest of my life, but that daily struggle with it has been lifted.
Wow.
And there's no other way to describe that other than a miracle. Yeah. And that's one of the things that you look that I see in these stories that we're telling, is that these are miracles, which is the hand of the Lord involved in our lives. And it's real. That's the thing that like comes so powerful to me, is that like, this is real. Like there's a lot of stuff that like you can't see and you can't know, and it requires faith. But when you look at the stories over and over again, it's true. It's real, you know, and I know that like people in other faith backgrounds, they have similar stories. They have stories about healing and redemption and faith. And these just happen to be ours. You know, I always buy into the adage that the more specific you can be in your storytelling, the more general, the wider reach your story will have. Yeah. And so these just happen to be LDS themed stories, but
the principles
and the ideas, I think, are universal. Now we do this thing where we teach these specific truths, and the thing that has sort of like been impressed upon my mind is how the thing when we talk about the gospel and like the thing, what we're actually talking about is Christ. Yeah. And it's very, very, very simple. There's a lot that gets sort of like culture and things that aren't actually the gospel. Mm-hmm. But when you distill it down, it's Christ and his message of forgiveness and hope. And, you know, we've developed a website called missionstories.com where you can see like where it's playing and information about the project. But there's also a link, a part on the site where you can share your mission story if you have one, with the idea being that we could make it into an episode. So we know these stories are out there.
Oh yeah.
And so we're looking for them. And the other thing I wanted to mention too, as we're talking about filmmaking, is that I'm going to oversee this project, but I'm not going to write and direct everything. And so we want to provide opportunities as we build this series and move forward into the future with it for other LDS writers and directors to tell stories and to use their talents.
Oh man. Well, I honestly hope this becomes like a pandemic of sharing the gospel. Honestly, I really do, because I think just these few, the three that you're doing right now, will hopefully inspire people to be like, okay, wait a minute, I've got something. And especially when the website is kind of open-ended, saying, please share yours, you know? I love that. That's so great. What about yourself, Jace?
I don't have anything as like instant, like the flow that Bryce just talked about. Mine was a process, particularly this last year with COVID. I alluded to the depressive episode. I spiraled into a pretty deep depression. You know, things with my family, things with work, things with my calling in church. They just kind of all became this perfect storm to like
kind of suffocate you almost, you know? Yeah.
And I my wife, she was like, you need to go to you need to go see somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I don't want to see somebody. You know, it's that pride that we all have within ourselves. Yeah. Like, no, I can totally do this. Right. I was 40.
Because you're the guy that people come to see.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I was like 40, whatever years old. Like, I've got it together, even though I don't have it together, but I don't want to tell somebody else that I don't have it together, you know? Yeah. And so she was just like, no, you need to see somebody. Yeah. So I ended up going, seeing two different therapists. One, you know, he was great, but he just wasn't the one for me. And I finally found the one that worked. And it was a process of learning that it's okay that I have these struggles. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to get help, and it's okay to not just, like, it's okay that I felt broken, you know, and learning that, like, learning how to manage certain things that have been able to kind of turn me around, and honestly, like, things started to click, even with COVID happening and the pandemic happening, things like started to fall into place. Like all of a sudden I get one job, and then I got another job, and I was producing some commercials, one of which you were in. And then, you know, and then I meet Bryce, and like, honestly, I was like, this is where I need to be. And this is the happy me. Like, all of a sudden I've learned these skills through therapy. I've learned that I actually do have like a core center value. But one of the first experiences in this particular treatment that I was going through was my therapist walked me through like trying to find my core center. And it sounds corny when you talk about it. Like, everybody's like, yeah, I've got a sense of self. Yeah. I didn't have a sense of self. I didn't know like who I was. And it was in this process of in my mind walking down a spiral staircase to the center core of my person, and coming to the part of coming in this staircase to a point where the staircase wasn't finished. And I had to sit there on the edge of this unfinished staircase with my legs dangling off into darkness, and realizing at 40 whatever years old, I didn't know who I was, even though I was brought up in the church. Sure. I know I'm a child of God. Yeah. All that whole stuff, in my center, I didn't have that. And
it's so interesting, Jace, because and this is where I feel like the atonement really comes in. What sometimes we're brought up with are narratives. Right? Narratives of like, oh yeah, this is what we believe, and this is who we are, and this is yada, yada, yada. But that narrative will one day fade if you don't really have that connection, that real sense of self. Anyway, so yeah, sorry, keep going.
No, anyway, it was this surreal experience where, I actually was able to get outside of my body and look back and see myself sitting on these steps, legs dangling, no way to get down, and it was darkness all around me. Like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Time Bandits. It's an 80s film done by Terry Gilliam.
Oh man. Sounds awesome.
It really is. It's kind of a cult classic. But there's a section at the end of the movie where they're hanging out in this darkness. Yeah. And I was like, I'm all of a sudden in this movie, but it's in my mind. Yeah. Anyway, to make a long story short, it was that process, and then connecting that process back to the stuff I was brought up, and truly believe, like, I believe that I'm a child of God, but like I had a disconnect. Mm-hmm. I knew the gospel is true. I knew that Christ is my savior. I knew that he performed the atonement, but it didn't connect with me. And so it was that process of doing that.
Dude, that is so powerful and that's so transformative. Honestly, thank you guys both for sharing those things and being vulnerable, because a lot of our listeners are going through the same thing, and whether it's suffering from alcoholism or not, like having a self-doubt, like not knowing your sense of self, or going through some of the things that are talked about in mission stories, there's a component of it that really connects with everybody here. And so I really feel like those things are going to really empower people. And the truth is for me, it's like, it always kind of goes back to what you were saying, that relationship with Christ specifically. And if you can go back there and like make that your absolute foundation, then things will feel solid and feel more whole. But it is always scary to have your feet dangling, dude, and like not know where the heck the next step is, or am I just going to fall into darkness forever?
Yeah.
So that's crazy. So I want to just kind of wrap it up with just a couple last questions. What brings you guys both joy?
For me personally, it's the feeling like I matter.
Oh, I like that.
That what I do in life has meaning, and that if I weren't here to do it, there would be an absence. And that's one of those things that like I find very easy to believe about other people, but I struggle with believing it about myself.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us do.
Yeah.
It's sometimes easier to believe that someone else is deserving of Christ's love or his forgiveness, but to turn that on ourselves and actually love ourselves as we love our neighbor. Like the idea that what I do has purpose, and I see it in my family, with my wife and my kids. I see it with other people that I interact with. And it's not just a one-way street. It's not just that I do things that can help other people. It's that they do things that help me. And when I have peace, like when I'm able to sleep at night, it's when I know that like in that day, I did something that mattered. And it doesn't have to be some big thing. It can even just be listening to someone else.
Yeah.
But that's what brings me joy, is like believing that my life has meaning.
I love that. Thank you so much. What about you, Jason?
So having a sense that I matter is a big thing, because that was something that I've struggled with for a long time.
Sure.
But recently my wife and I, we sat down, we kind of talked about our core values. Like I think everybody I don't think. I know everybody has core values, but we don't always take the time to label them. And it was an interesting process to go through with her, because I came up with a couple of core values that were like, I wouldn't have
said it before.
No, I wouldn't. Like it wouldn't have. They were just like off in the corner. Like, oh yeah, these are values that I appreciate, but I didn't recognize how much they matter to me. And one of them was creativity, and which is funny because as a filmmaker, like that's my life.
That's
right?
your life.
But being able to be creative in a way that matters brings me joy. And whether that's with my family, my family obviously brings me joy. Like they're amazing, right?
Yeah.
But being able to be creative with them, that brings me joy. Being able to be creative on a film set, that brings me joy. Being able to be creative with friends on a film set, like that's even better, right?
Yeah, sure.
And then with friends on a film set, telling stories that matter, like that's just, for me, I love that.
It's awesome. Like as I'm hearing both of you guys' experiences, I feel like you both are like shifting your lives from the way you used to live to living lives that are more filled with grace, like I can see like more of a sense of ease. And it's interesting because like Jason, I always remember you as like such an intense dude, you know, just so intense. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I ever gonna like? Now I'm like, now I know where Corbin gets it from. But like, but the thing is like, honestly, the last couple of years as we've worked on projects, I'm like, dude, like it's just a joy. It's just a joy to be around, you know, and like, and same with you, Bryce. Like just you sharing your kind of like your feelings and stuff. It's so raw and it's so real and it's so genuine and. And I really hope that people watching Mission Stories can get that from it, like the rawness, the authenticness, but also the grace that comes with it. That arm of mercy extends. You know, it's so great. So I guess just last question. What would you tell your younger selves? What advice would you give to that younger? Yeah, Jace, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start this one.
Yeah.
One, that you matter, you know, and I think that I would also say that it's okay to trust the process rather than wanting to white knuckle the process, right? The idea that we control things in our lives is kind of a fallacy, and that I've started to learn.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I was intense. I was trying to control stuff like white knuckle. I remember a friend of ours told us that when she first met me, her impression was that I was gruff and unapproachable. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
But whatever. Maybe it helps me do my job on set. Yeah. I have to keep things moving along. Yeah. But no, just to trust the process. That it's okay. It's okay to be patient in the development.
The outcomes are totally with the Lord, right? Yeah. And it is, and I love what you just said right there about trusting the process, because so many times when I want something, I'm like, oh, I got to control it, like relationships. And let's just see how well those have gone. Anyway, moving on with that statement, what I was going to say is, like, every time I try controlling something, it just doesn't work out. And then you realize, wow, control really is an illusion, you know? Like, the only control I think we have is what we decide to choose, and where we decide to put our will. Because, like, look, there's like a trillion things happening inside of you, like your cells multiplying, your heart beating, things that you have no control over, but yet you just kind of take it for granted, right? And because those things are happening, you can survive and do things. But if those things just stop for 1 second, you're dead, right? And so I love that idea of like, hey, if the Lord can take over your body and make it do the things that it's supposed to do so you can like function, it's okay to trust the process with other aspects of your life too. You know,
it's really hard though still.
Sure.
Like, I think that, you know, you asked the question, what would you tell your younger self? I think I'm trying to tell my younger self like 30 minutes ago and my younger self from an hour ago, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's something that I have to keep telling myself, because that inherent need or want or like desire to control, or have the illusion of control.
I'm going to have just this little segment of this podcast. I'm going to send it to you every time you're trying to control something.
Yes, please do.
I'm like, your younger self told you this already.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So now you're it's just so meta right now.
Totally.
It's so meta right now. What about yourself?
Well, the first thing I would say to younger me is that I love you. And that's actually been a journey to get there, because I look back at some of the stuff that I did, and it's not a feeling of love all the time that I'm
sure,
you know. But I would also say, try to get to the point where your desires are in line with those of the Lord faster. I think that part of growing and learning is that, like, that's actually possible. Where your desires can be informed by God, where they're not at the whim of like your preferences from here to there, but they can actually be like these these desires that are in line with what God would want for me.
Yeah.
And to not look to things of the world to make you happy, because they won't.
Yeah.
And also to really believe in the power of other people helping you and allow them to help you. That's one of the things that, like, for the chapter of the film that, like, I'm a part of, which is the title of the chapter is Full Circle, is I finally got help, and you know, this is like, you know, recently, but the people who loved me and were trying to help, and people who didn't love me and were trying to help, and the Lord and all this stuff was there for years. And what it took was something dramatic enough to turn my focus so that I could see it. And so I would say to the younger me, like, you don't actually have to go through all of that stuff. I mean, I did have to go through it because it's the only way that it worked out.
That's how you learn, right?
But it would have, some advice would be, you know, accept grace with ease. Like, don't do this thing where you doubt that you deserve it.
Yeah.
You already know that you believe that for everybody else. Believe it for you.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so great. And I think, again, like, accepting that grace and believing that you're worthy of it, like just accepting that you're worthy of it, man, life would be better. I feel like one of the greatest tragedy, like, this is a quote I heard, I don't know who said it, but it was one of the greatest tragedies of man is that he receives very little of what his Father in heaven wants to give him. And I really believe that to be true. It's like we're always fighting a God who knows everything that's best for us. And he's like, look, I just want to bless you. Like, so just let me bless you. Let me give you more good in your life. And let me give you more of what you really, really want. Because a lot of times I feel like we have no clue what we want. And that's why I love what you were saying about, like, aligning your will with the Lord, where then you realize, oh, this is actually what I wanted the whole time. But it's that process, right? It's that process of trying to figure it out.
Totally is. One of my favorite quotes in this, it's Larry R. Lawrence. It was from a talk that he gave, and it's basically to him, to Christ or the Lord, direction is ever more important than the speed. Right? So if you're pointed towards where God wants you to go, it doesn't matter if you're crawling, on your hands and knees.
I love that.
So
just trusting the process then, right?
Trust the process.
You just know, like, you're going to get there. So, Well, guys, thank you so much for joining on the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast. Like, this has been an awesome podcast. I've learned a lot, and I'm so excited for Mission Stories, which comes out May 6th in theaters, right? And then May 7th, it also, what happens after that?
It opens May 6th in theaters, which are previews. And then full day May 7th.
Okay.
And it will be in theaters thereafter.
And you can buy tickets online already, right?
Yeah, at missionstories.com. It has all the theaters that it's available at.
And then people can also write in their mission stories in hopes that it might even turn into future episodes.
Correct.
Down the road. Well, I'm very excited. I think this is going to create a global pandemic movement of love, which we need, and thank you guys so much for joining me.
And lemonade,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know.